We have John Altavilla here from the Hartford Courant. He covers UConn, and last night UConn lost to Notre Dame. It's the fourth time they've played this year. What are your immediate thoughts on that?
Well, Cheryl, first thing I think of is that what a tremendous rivalry it is. It's the 8 games that they've played in the last 2 years have probably been among the best in women's basketball over that span. Just intensely competitive games, equal performance by teams with great talent. And for UConn, it was sort of like a microcosm of their season. They played great for so long, and then for short periods of time they would just sort of tune out. And that's what happened to them when things got really tight last night.
Gino Auriemma has talked about this team as being overperforming, like he was surprised that they even got this far. But last night, Tiffany Hayes played well. Stephanie Dolson came out, she was doing her thing. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that they were overperforming, or do you think that they were,
I don't think they were overperforming, but I think there's a lot of truth in the argument that they probably got to a Final Four that they might not have been ready to get to. But that's just a testimony to the amount of talent that they have in the coaching. I think when the season began, UConn wasn't in a lot of the conversations in regard to who was going to get to the Final Four. I think people were fixated on Baylor with good reason, Notre Dame because of the year they had last year. And Connecticut had lost Maya Moore, so that's a difficult thing to compensate for when you lose 3,000 points. No one quite knew how they were going to adjust to it. But they got here anyhow, and I think in the long run, the experience that they got from being here is going to help them in the future, because most people believe, and so does Coach Auriemma, that the next 3 years of UConn basketball are going to be probably the next glory era of the sport because of who they've got coming in and who they've got coming back.
Yes, and these recruits coming in, what are your thoughts on them?
Well, I usually go by what the coaches tell me, and I don't think I've ever heard Gino Auriemma or Chris Daly speak with such enthusiasm about a class of freshmen in a long time, particularly Breanna Stewart, the high school player of the year, who's going to be coming in next season to bolster their front court. She's 6'4", but she has great ball handling skills. She's a three-point shooter, tremendous shot blocker. Connecticut's never really had a player like her in their great history, someone that can do it all. And if you put Breanna Stewart into that lineup last night, the one that had to deal with Notre Dame, it might have been a totally different scenario. She could do so many things that even certainly Stephanie Dolson can't do, and Kia Stokes is too young to do. I think that's why, if you put her on the floor with a much older team, Bria Hartley already being an All-American, the possibilities, the interchanging lineups that he's going to have at his disposal are going to be really fun to watch.
So one last question. You know all the ins and outs of the Gino Auriemma Pat Summitt saga.
I do.
But what are your thoughts last night on, in this weekend of them interacting and being very warm to each other?
Well, Cheryl, I thought it was great. That was one of the best things about the weekend. And you're right. We've watched the relationship run its course over the last 10 years. And, it's naive to believe that there wasn't a lot of professional animosity and personal animosity that had developed over the years. But when Gino hugged her on Saturday, I think that was the beginning of the thawing of the relationship. I'm not quite sure it's going to end in UConn playing Tennessee anytime soon. But I think it's important for the sake of the game that those two get along, because they are probably the greatest coaches in the history of women's basketball.